Joining us now is Michael Farris. He is the president and CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the most important nonprofit advocacy groups in our nation today. He is also the founding president of both the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and Patrick Henry College. Mike, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Ryan. I look forward to our time.
Absolutely, and as I understand it, many of your folks were there at the Supreme Court yesterday. I of course got the privilege and honor to hear Kristen Wagner deliver some remarks from the steps on the outside. You were following this case, have been, you and all of ADF. I just wanted to get your reaction to some of the oral arguments that were delivered yesterday.
Well, it was a great day. The oral arguments, from our perspective, were just fantastic. The best they could have possibly been. Scott Stewart, the Solicitor General of Mississippi, who argued the case for the state, defending the constitutionality of Mississippi's pro-life law, did a fabulous job. He made the argument that the viability standard in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, a decision from the 1990s, which modified to some degree the decision of Roe versus Wade, that decision and Roe before it were on flawed constitutional ground.
Yeah. That
the Constitution gives no right to abortion to anyone in the text, and that the court basically made a political decision in those two prior cases, and that those decisions should be reversed. And so the correct reason that the viability standard was not appropriate and not a constitutional rule is it was just made up. And he was bold, he was polite, he did a terrific job. Now, to our surprise, to some extent, the two attorneys who argued for the Women's Health Center and the Solicitor General of the United States, both argued that it was Roe or nothing, that they offered no middle ground whatsoever. They didn't say, well, you could tweak this, you could tweak that. And they knew the composition of the court. And it's really kind of a basic lawyering error, if you will, to suggest that you can just come here and stonewall the Supreme Court when they know that there's some desire to make some movement. And they offered them nothing but Roe. And so effectively both sides were arguing the same thing, that Roe is the issue and it either stands or it falls. And we're really hopeful that it's going to fall.
Absolutely. When you think of stare decisis in terms of the court's precedent, we know Plessy versus Ferguson was overturned. We know that the dreadful Dred Scott case was overturned. There have been many moments, well, I shouldn't say many moments, but there have been moments throughout history, landmark cases that the Supreme Court got wrong, especially and not the least Roe versus Wade. So what should we expect? What can we expect as we're watching this thing move forward? I know we're anticipating a June, July decision. What are the various outcomes that could happen?
Well, the role of precedent or stare decisis is important to a degree, but it shouldn't be overpowering. The ultimate rule is the supreme law of the land is not precedent. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution of the United States. And so if the precedent is wrong and is contrary to the Constitution, the duty of the court is to reverse it. Now, a way to say the proper role of stare decisis, or let's follow the precedent unless it's really clear, is people say, well, the decision was wrong, the Constitution rules to the contrary, and the court should say, well, are we sure? And once they've asked that question and said, yeah, we're sure, that's the end of the legitimate role of stare decisis. They, be careful, don't do this haphazardly. But once the decision is clear that the Constitution reaches a contrary conclusion to a prior case, it's the court's absolute oath-bound duty to reverse that prior case. And I think that's what's applicable here. There's no such thing in a legitimate sense as a super precedent. Yeah, there are cases that talk about that, but that whole construct is just made up out of thin air and is more Supreme Court air castles. And we should not be guiding our country based on air castles. It should be on the text of the Constitution.
Absolutely. And so, as you're looking forward,
Yeah.
the potential outcomes, and in terms of what we might expect, what are you thinking there?
Thank you for reminding me of your actual question.
No, fine.
So it's okay. Well, I expect that the most likely outcome, just from just the flow of the argument, is that they're either going to reverse Roe or they're going to affirm Roe. Now, there is some chance that they're going to tinker with the viability standard and do something kind of in between. And Justice Roberts was asking questions along those lines, but he was the only one that appeared to be interested in that kind of tinkering. And so, there's pretty clearly 4 justices that are very open to reversing Roe. Justice Barrett's comments were a little more in the gray zone, perhaps. They're just not quite as clear as to what her thinking was. But she was not responding to the Roberts kinds of questions, and she certainly sounded nothing like Justice Sotomayor or Justice Breyer, who were obviously in there fighting hard to defend Roe. So I think we're going to see a positive decision. I can't give you the exact parameters of that, but by the end of June, the court almost never goes past the end of June for issuing an opinion of a case that's argued during a particular term. So by the end of June, we're going to know the answer, and I think that we should at least say this, that the continued viability of Roe versus Wade is very much on the table.
Very, very good. We'll end it there. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. Thank you for all you're doing at Alliance Defending Freedom. We really appreciate what you and your organization represent when it comes to not only constitutional rights, but our first liberties that are oftentimes being challenged and at risk. Thank you for all you're doing to stand for freedom.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's good to be with you.